Deontay Wilder, ever since he took that loss against Tyson Fury, he has been so quiet. You know, the odd post here and there, but never really anything. He seems to just be out in the wilderness now since he lost to Tyson Fury. And for those who are new to the channel, because we've gained a lot of subs over the last month and a half, a little thing that I do sporadically on this channel is I take a fighter, right, and I title the video, "This fighter has a big problem." Okay, now that's not necessarily to say he's got a big problem in terms of who he's fighting. That's not necessarily to say he's got a big problem in terms of, you know, him as his skill set, we'll say. It's just in general. It's a fighter who, there's so many things gone wrong there that I just feel the need to make a video about it. And with Deontay Wilder, since that Fury loss, it seems like, has he come to grips with it? I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, it is hard to tell because he's not been saying so much. But if he's listening to what a lot of his fans are saying, and people, even his own brother, is saying, it doesn't bode well. You know, it's not giving me optimism that the man is going to look at that situation with him and Tyson Fury and move on and come out, I won't say stronger, but come out with a bit more sense. Right, that's basically, yeah, a little bit more common sense. Because let's look at Deontay Wilder, okay? Going into that Tyson Fury fight, the second fight, he was under the impression that all he had to do was be perfect for 3 seconds. Now Tyson Fury was secretly scared of him. That all these heavyweights, be it your Anthony Joshua's, your Dylan Whites, all these guys were afraid of Deontay Wilder. They were afraid of the power. He was going around saying he could knock out a prime Mike Tyson. He was going around and saying that he wanted to have bodies on his resume, this, that and the other. You know, he was, even when he would be getting interviewed for fights, or when he'd be talking for fights, he'd be doing it in that real hushed voice. You know, when he was really trying to sound, what's the word, when he was trying to sound kind of, you know, intimidating, he talked like that. You know, he'd try and make himself out to be as intimidating as he possibly could. He'd built up a persona in his head, right? He got it into his head that he was the most intimidating heavyweight, that he was damn near unbeatable, that even though he had limitations, he had flaws, he hit so hard and his power was so feared that all he had to do was land one shot on you and the fight was done. Right? So he went into that Tyson Fury fight thinking that this guy's afraid of me, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to clip him once, and this time he's not going to get up. So obviously, and you could see it in the fight, that he got the shock of his life when Fury came out and he bossed it. You know, he put Deontay Wilder on the back foot, he bullied him, he walked him down, he dropped him a couple of times, he beat him up over 7 rounds. It wasn't the worst beating you'll ever see. Like, in terms of beatings that I feel were more damaging, I think AJ, because they both got stopped in 7 rounds, I think AJ took more damage against Andy Ruiz than Deontay Wilder did against Tyson Fury. But from a mental point of view, you would say that Deontay Wilder took a hell of a lot more damage. Because look at someone like Anthony Joshua, right? Anthony Joshua, even prior, like even when he was, you know, fighting guys like Parker and he was fighting guys like Alexander Povetkin, even in interviews, he was saying he expects to lose. You know, he would always allude to the fact that, you know, it was never like, if I lose. It was always, you know, when the time comes and I do lose, you know, he was already aware of his limitations. He was aware of the fact that, you know, he's immortal, that he's in the heavyweight division, that anything can happen, that things could, one punch can change everything. So AJ was always aware of those limitations. Now I'm sure the ego on him, because everyone has an ego, no matter who you are, there's always a little bit of ego there. I'm sure his ego would tell him that I will eventually lose, but it won't be this fight, or it won't be this fight. Do you know what sort of way? So he was always probably thinking in his head, sooner or later someone's going to get me, but it probably won't be this fight, or probably won't be that fight, or, you know, kind of like that. So when eventually he got, you know, beaten up by Andy Ruiz in the first fight, he was able to come back because he knew what he did wrong. He knew the changes he had to make. And let's face facts, Andy Ruiz, he's definitely a useful heavyweight, but it's not rocket science on how to beat him. You know, you're not going to need a massive blueprint on how to beat Andy Ruiz. It's pretty obvious what you need to do, right? Whereas Deontay Wilder, he would always speak about how, you know, he'd never lose, you know, that the people were afraid of him, that he had this he was the most dangerous heavyweight. So he really did build himself up to such a point where he thought it was just impossible for him to lose. You know, making all these ridiculous statements, acting like the guys he was beating, like Luis Ortiz, Dominic Brazil, were, you know, outside of the champions, you know, like Fury and AJ, that these were the cream of the crop, you know. Luis Ortiz at one stage I thought he was pretty useful, but right now I don't. Brazil, I always knew that he was tailor made for Deontay Wilder. I mean, people say AJ, took 7 rounds, took Wilder 1 round. Yeah, but Brazil is like, if you wanted a style for Wilder to look good against, Dominic Brazil. Poor defense, slow as anything, and easy to hit. That has knockout written all over it for Deontay Wilder. So when I saw that fight and I saw the knockout, it didn't surprise me. I expected that, because as I said, stylistically, Brazil is just Wilder's, perfect fit. It's like white to bread. It's a perfect fit. So Wilder had all these things going on in his head. He was thinking he was all this. He was thinking he was this, that, and the other. So when the time came and he eventually lost, and he lost in pretty bad fashion. Judging by the way he's been, where he's not been talking, the only thing we've seen of him is that very silly video where he was doing those poses, which was, no. We've seen very little from him. But the excuses from his fans we've heard a lot of. The suit, right? I think the suit came from him. The suit, the injuries, the goddamn glove gate, that was pathetic. People in his own team drugging him. Not Fury's team, his own team, right? Drugging him. I think his brother even said that. His brother is an idiot. But seriously, he's even worse than Wilder, and Wilder is bad. These things are not going to... This is not going to help you move on. It's not going to help you win a rematch if you even get the rematch. None of this will help you win the rematch. What will help Deontay Wilder win the rematch, if he has any chance of winning this rematch, or if he even takes the rematch, will be look at what you did wrong. It's like that in any aspect of life. From mistakes you learn, right? And if you don't learn, well, as I've said before, those who do not learn from history, they're doomed to repeat it. That was George Santayana who said that. It's a good saying, right? If you don't learn from the mistakes you made, guess what happens? You do them again. I've made that mistake a few times. I've not learned from a mistake first times, and the same things happened again. Well, I've made damn sure not to let it happen the third time. So that's what I think Wilder needs to do. But in terms of the Fury trilogy fight at this stage, I mean, it seems dead in the water now, truth be told. Because Bob Arum is saying, and Bob Arum, you can take what he says with a pinch of salt, but he seems more... If you see Shirley Finkel talk, and you see Bob Arum talk, Bob Arum seems a lot more confident about, this is what we agreed, and this is how it is. Where Shirley Finkel is kind of saying this, that, and the other, and you can just by looking at Shirley Finkel, you can tell there's a bit of uncertainty there with him. So I think that deep down, Deontay Wilder, you can hear all the excuses in the world, but I don't think deep down he wants the Tyson Fury trilogy fight. Deep down, I think he's had one fight with him that he was lucky to get a draw in. And I'm sure he was aware of that. And I'm sure he kind of thought, okay, I'll make adjustments. But in the second fight, he was just beaten up. And I don't think he's fully got over that. And I don't think he wants that. I think Deontay Wilder at this stage, and I do believe that, look, Wilder and injuries, I think he has injuries now? He probably does. He's injury prone. He is. He's an injury prone fighter. But I think that Deontay Wilder maybe is exacerbating some of these injuries. I saw Mark do a video where he says that... he may be out for 2 years with a shoulder injury. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I know Mark was said he was contacted by someone about that. So, we'll have to wait and see if anything comes out about that. But we're hearing other people say he's in great shape. So, who knows? In terms of Wilder, I really don't think he wants this Fury rematch. And I think that Deontay Wilder, do I think he even wants to stay boxing? I don't know. But he's got problems in a sense of people are going to feel even more confident now if they get in the ring with him, because they've seen what Fury did, and they'll think maybe they have a broken man in front of them. Deontay Wilder, if he takes the Fury trilogy fight, he's probably going to lose that fight. If he goes in another direction, as in, would he even be allowed? Would his management even let him go in another direction? Because let's look at it like this, right? When he fought Fury in the first fight, he had 2 pay-per-view fights that flopped massively. And, Shirley Finkel, Al Heyman, PBC, they all took a hit because those pay-per-views that Deontay Wilder was getting over. Well, to be fair, the Brazil fight wasn't on pay-per-view, but he was being overpaid because he got so much money against Fury, he wanted it again. So they took hits on those shows. They won't let Wilder do that again. I think that the team behind Wilder want to cash out. They want to use this and be like, right, let's get our paycheck, let's ship Deontay Wilder in there, take a few shots, and then sail off into the distance. So That's what I think is going on. In theory, I think Deontay Wilder doesn't want the trilogy fight. I think that I'd say if I had to guess, I'd say he probably does want to go back to fighting at some stage next year with a new trainer probably. But I'm sure he would rather have maybe 2 tune-up fights against lesser opposition, maybe an Adam Kalnacki, maybe a Charles Martin, and then maybe look at going down the road of possibly, if his confidence builds back up, going down the road of a Fury or a Joshua. But as for right now, I mean, the problem is he's got all these guys pulling the strings. You know, Deontay Wilder's like the puppet, and you have all these people, you know, pulling the strings. He thinks he's in charge, he's not. So whatever they decide to do next is what he's going to have to do next. But in terms of the trilogy fight, the more I'm starting to see is the more I'm starting to think Deontay Wilder is trying to, without saying it, kind of get out of it. Maybe using injuries or something like that as an excuse. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think that we are not going to see that trilogy fight. And that if we see Deontay Wilder in the ring again, it's going to be against someone who he should be beating. So, you know, those are my thoughts on this. That is the problem in a nutshell. Promoters, fights you don't want to take, injuries, technical ability, because Deontay Wilder is flawed technically, we all know that. And having a team full of yes men, like that little, you know what, JD's in his corner. You know, that guy, I wouldn't trust him. Man, I wouldn't trust him. Jesus, oh man. Nah, man. Man, I wouldn't trust him to keep a cone, you know, from melting if it was in a freezer or something like that. I wouldn't trust that guy with anything. So, you know, that's what I got to say on this. In terms of Wilder, like, every time I've made videos on him, I've always come across as, you know, knocking Deontay Wilder. I like watching Wilder fight. I've always, ever since I seen him first, before he fought Stavern, when I saw him first, I liked him. I like watching him fight. I just like the power, like the explosiveness. Him as a person, not particularly, but him as a fighter, I love watching. You know, I've always been a fan of Deontay Wilder. You know, in truth, I've always been a fan of his. I love watching him. You know, but as a person, as a person, we all have flaws. You know, flaws make you what you are. You know, some of the people I care about the most in the world, they've got flaws, and I wouldn't change those flaws about them, because they wouldn't be the same person. So that's what I say. Everyone has flaws, but Wilder, one of his flaws is that he just doesn't seem to be fully switched on up there with regards to everything that's going on around him. That's what I think his biggest flaw is. That's his biggest problem. So anyway, I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Smash the like button, because I don't do these as much as I used to, and I do enjoy doing them. I know you guys enjoyed them, so hopefully smash the like button. Leave a comment below. Subscribe, of course, if you guys haven't already. As always, people, I'll talk to you. Peace.